This is good culture.
Welcome to the Good Show. Now, I'm excited because I get an opportunity to sit down with some wonderful people, some thinkers, as I've often said, people who are like me, whether they be polymaths, whether they be prophets, poets, folks who operate in the academic space, people who operate in the artistic space or in the advocate space. So this is our kind of introductory episode. And I'm going to introduce some brothers who are going to be on here regularly with me. Doesn't mean they're going to be on every episode. And we're going to just hopefully bring you good news from across culture, from across academia, from across arts. Just what does it look like to expand the goodness of God throughout culture? And so we'll have many different people who will kind of traverse the landscape or I guess you could say the real estate of this particular digital realm we exist in. But today I am blessed to be with two wonderful brothers. One is Ian um, O'Brien, who is a good dude that I've met recently and who helps me run the Good Culture Institute. Ian,
Yes, sir.
would you like to share a little bit about yourself? Just briefly, and then I'm going to ask you a separate question about why you decided to be a part of this particular show.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Ian. I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. My day job is executive pastor at a church here, and yeah, man, I that's probably good enough for now. I'll answer your other question later.
And the other brother is Tryce Prince. I met Tryce at a viewing of a documentary that I was an executive producer of in Chicago, and just hit it off. And the moment we started to chat and build, I was like, man, this is a brother that I need to get to know. Tryce, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so met Sho at the documentary premiere because I'm a PhD candidate in sociology. I consider myself a social theorist of race and religion, which is a really fancy way of saying I think a lot about race, think a lot about religion, the ways in which it influences and shapes our lives, but also shapes our interactions. I love good stories. I love telling them. I love hearing them. I love listening to them. So I'm really excited to be a part of the show and hear a lot of good stories and have a lot of good conversations.
Excellent. You should have Tryce go first. His intro was way better than mine.
Well, Ian, there's multiple reasons why you probably decided to join this. One is because you work closely with me as a director of operations. Right. Is that you director of operations? I still don't even know you're director of operations for the Good Culture Institute. But the other one is anytime a brother starts a podcast, he has to have a white guy to join.
Yes,
this is named Ian.
Well, in this particular instance, yes.
There you go. So what are some reasons why you guys have you think this is a good endeavor? What's encouraging about this at this particular time in your life and the particular time in which we live that you felt like this was a good idea?
Man, I think again, as being part of Good Culture Institute and knowing kind of what you're trying to build and the conversations you want to engage in, to me, it's just the world needs more of this kind of to be a model of what it means to sometimes disagree and still be in community with one another, right? To be able to have thoughtful conversations instead of just yelling at one another from across the aisle, if you will, or across from wherever, and just being able to kind of dive into the nuance and the complexity of a lot of situations, and then just being able to get to learn from you guys and engage in those conversations from a perspective like yours that has been helpful and in some cases formative for me in different situations. And just, Tryce already told you how much of an expert he is in some of this stuff. And I'm just hyped to be able to learn mostly and chime in where I feel like what I got to say is relevant.
Yeah. Other than your beautiful whiteness, Ian, what do you bring to this show? What do you think? What do you think you bring as an expert?
Listen, man, I don't know. I think you asked me that before, and in terms of an expert, I know a lot about a lot of stuff, but I don't know if I'm an expert in much of anything. But I feel like I have a somewhat unique perspective in the sense that, I work still in an evangelical church, and I kind of know these folks really intimately, and I know that the picture that gets painted of the evangelical church as a whole is not ever fully true about any individual. And then So professionally, that's kind of where I'm at. And then on the other side, I'm also not only am I the token white person in this podcast, I'm also the token white person in my family. So, I kind of understand things from a different perspective, and with being part of an interracial family and stuff like that. So, hopefully, I can just bring a level of thoughtfulness and
Gotcha.
and a willingness to shut up when I don't know what I'm talking about, and model that for some folks too, because I think that's a
Let us
necessary
all
skill.
learn that. Amen. Let us all learn that. Tryce, how about you?
Yeah, I joined the show because I think we need alternative spaces to build alternative visions for the future, and visions that aren't just originated from our partisan identity or our group identity, but that transcend groups, transcend our identities, and transcend the spaces in which we operate. And I love, Ian, that you mentioned, being in an evangelical space still. As someone who grew up in those spaces, I'm no longer necessarily in them, but I think it's important, if we think about the capital C church, to have that conversation, that dialogue, and show that and model that it's possible to get along. It's possible to build relationships, even if it doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean we agree on every topic or we view our kind of ecclesial identity in the same way. And so I'm just excited to model what that might look like, because I think we are siloed right now, not just in the church, but in society. We have our news sources, we have our podcasts, and they usually affirm the things that we believe. But what would it look like for us to bring a diverse group of people with a diverse group of experiences and perspectives onto one platform and model what that cross identity dialogue might look like?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I know is important in that is that even within the three of us, there are going to be things in which we diverge on. Right. And so I
Right.
don't expect everybody to agree with me on things. I don't expect you guys to agree. And then the folks we bring on. But I think this will be exactly what you said, Trice, is a place for great dialogue. But it don't always be, even in our I guess you can say our levity, because it will be some joking. There will be a lot of non-serious stuff. But I think that's
Right.
part of the humanity in which we want to bring to this particular space, is that there's ways in which comedy and entertainment disarms a lot of our politics and our posturing that I think is necessary for us to have human dialogue. And not necessarily to create any kind of like passive agreeing, but just understanding where we can reason together. And so we'll have many different people who are guest regulars, and then we'll be interviewing different people. And there'll be shows when I do this by myself. There'll be times when I'll just rant for 5-10 minutes, and that's an episode. I don't know. There'll be times when Ian or Tryce will just rant, or I'll allow other people who I believe who are part of this good culture family to come onto the good show and just share their thoughts and their beliefs that I think that are helpful. Because ultimately what I would like to do is create a community of people who say, man, like, when I am struggling to wrestle through an idea, or I need affirmation on something, or I just want to hear a perspective that's somewhat balanced but reasonable, I want to go to the good show and hear them.
Right.
But even I think of this, and I think we've had the discussion, the good show is probably going to be more of like the front yard where people come and fellowship. The Good Culture Institute is more of the inside of the house. It's the living room where people will come and engage more deeply. And so allow this to be the pipeline for you to get into a deeper community, a deeper fellowship, which we'll be introducing very soon, which is our community in which we're establishing, where people will be able to not only share thoughts and ideas, but to promote thoughts and ideas through artwork and writing and just advocacy things that they're doing throughout their. So all that to say, this show is going to be very much like its, I guess you can say, its disposition very diverse in the things, in the modality, but also in the communication.
This is good culture.
So I'm gonna flip the question. Why did you decide to join your own podcast that you started?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One is I often do not cave to the pressure of like community necessarily, but it just felt like I got an overwhelming amount of messages, text messages, DMs, and friends saying, "Sho, like, why don't you have a podcast?" Like, I'll post something and they'll say, "Man, we really need your voice." And oftentimes I just don't pay much attention to that. But I felt like, man, not only their affirmation, but I felt like the Lord also was putting on me this, like, hey, man, like I've given you this platform and this education and these experiences for a reason, not necessarily for you to get popular and blow up, but there are a certain cadre of people who would love to be educated by you. And then the other reason is because I got a dope album that just released and people need to hear it, and I would love to talk about it. And here's what I'm dead serious about the album part, but there's a deeper discussion that I think, especially you, Tryce, I think you would appreciate. I think there's a scarcity of intellectual conversations around creativity in the Christian space, especially like in our circles. Now, oftentimes we're going to say our circles, and we can, throughout the episodes, we'll define that. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time defining that right now, but there are concentric circles. Just to make the definition real quick, Ian talked about evangelicalism, there's Black church, and then there's Black academia, Black Christian academia. Let me say that. So there's a Black traditional church, and there is another one. There's this nebulous space between the Black church and evangelicalism, which is kind of like the Black church planting movement that happened in the 2000s and 2010s. Within those four concentric circles, oftentimes we leave the discussions around creativity and art to either the academics far on the left or to like Christian hip hop websites that really don't, if I'm just going to be honest, like that. And so
it's scratch the surface, right? Like,
yeah, like it's very
superficial,
elementary. And I think about albums that I've appreciated from Christian artists and even non-Christian artists, and I'm like, man, I just want to have an intellectual discussion about this project, and without without the judgment on one side of it being extremely demonic, and the other side where it's like empty praise. It's like no, not empty praise, but like flawless praise for a project that needs to be critiqued a little bit. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's another reason this podcast, to me, hopefully, or this show, better yet, will hopefully be that for people that we can bring in. And I don't want it to be elitist. I don't want it just to be folks like Tryce who come and join us. So, you know what I'm saying? We also got to bring.
Don't believe that credential stuff.
Come on,
bring some. Yes, I haven't.
But I love what you mentioned, because I think this show represents what oftentimes takes place in the group chat or the group message. And I know it's been true for us, where we go see a movie or see an article or a book, and it's just like, I need to talk about this. And I think this show can be that space where if you want to hear folks talk about pressing issues, or you are just needing that outlet, it can be that. Well, I just really had a question that I wanted to pose, and that's why now? Why this moment? Knowing you've been working on the album for a while, it could have been easy to say, well, one more song, or let me work on this idea. Why did you feel like now was the moment to put some things together? Because you've had an extended rollout the last, half a year or so.
Yeah. I think a lot of this album was one more song. Oh, give me one more song. And that was like a 4-year process. So I initially, Ian, and I had this discussion. Ian, we didn't know each other in 2020 or 2021, but I released my book in 2021. And if you read my book, there's a page at the very back where I say, be on the lookout for, there you go, Midnight of a Good Culture.
Yeah.
And that released in 2021 of May. And so I had every intention of releasing an album that year, and then life got in the way. Some of you guys have heard me on other podcasts or clips talking about the things that I experienced, but it took me a while. And I truly believe in offering people my art and creativity out of the outpouring of a healthy heart. And I just wasn't healthy at that period of time. And if I'm honest, I wasn't really healthy when I wrote that book. I wasn't really healthy when I published the book. Let's say that.
There you go. Yeah,
Some of what I wrote was before my unhealthy period of life. But during the release of that album, I definitely wasn't in a healthy place. And so it took 4 years for me to get to a place where I felt like, you know what? Although I started working on this album and some of the song concepts in 2020, I think this is the right time. And I do need to stop because I think the pressing moment in which we live in needs for this kind of critical, but also this critical commentary that is still full of hope, but maybe not the kind of hope that people think. Like it's a hope. It's an apocalyptic hope, if anything.
Right.
It's a hope that says like, hey, if God brings judgment, He's still good, and I still believe that something good will come from that. And so, but He may bring judgment. And so, and as I was seeing things unravel, I started this album in 2020, and you would think like, man, this album probably won't be relevant, but I felt like it's even more relevant now than it was today. And I think that speaks to a couple of things. I think what the Lord was speaking through me, but also the acceleration of rage within our culture.
Yeah.
There's a couple of topics I'm going to write down in the queue for later.
All right.
But one particular piece that you mentioned was, and you hear this a lot in the hip hop space broadly, but rappers who don't live their rhymes. And I think it's important not to miss that the fact that you were at a place where maybe the words in the book and the lyrics in the album didn't match your life off the mic, away from the mic.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that integrity to say, you know what, there's some growth that needs to happen before I necessarily speak into the culture. I want to make sure that it's from a space that is pure, not without struggles, not without difficulties, because that's never going to stop. But to be in a place of leadership and speaking, it requires, I think, a recognition of where oneself is. Absolutely. And an ability to be really vulnerable and have a hard conversation with yourself and self-examine in a lot of ways. And so I respect you for doing that.
Amen.
That's good. Yeah.
There's the shadow of shame. I say the Holy Spirit can be quite annoying.
There it is.
You realize your flesh is poison. And that's really what it is. It was just that the Holy Spirit was bro, let me tell you, there's no greater affirmation of the spirit of salvation like being in sin. And I know that sounds crazy, but when you're living in sin, that is going to be the moment in which you realize, am I sealed by the Spirit or not? Because if you are cool with the lifestyle you're living, then you're probably not sealed by the Spirit. But I just couldn't continue. It was just like, oh, nah. And so as much as I want to say like a show had integrity or whatever, it was the Spirit just working me. And I just knew, I was like, yo, this is not my life. This is not who I am. So, yeah.
It's good.
How do y'all consume music?
I mean, I played it when I woke up, and I think I made it through most of the tracks before I got to work. And then I don't think I finished it till I got home, but I try to listen, especially an album from an artist like, well, not even just you, like most of the artists that I really admire are the ones that are going to create a work of art within their album, not a bunch of singles. You know, because to me, a bunch of singles is just a play. Like I can just go get your best songs from all your other albums and create a playlist if I just want singles. So having something that, knowing that you were intentional about creating a work that has this running theme and a through line of content, I want to be pretty intentional about making sure I listen to the whole thing, at least all within one day, if not one sitting.
Yeah. And for me, I know the artists that I listen to, or at least I like to think I know their music. And I was expecting a concept album. And so I knew I needed to be in a place where I was ready to consume and listen to a concept album.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Cardi B, I wasn't necessarily expecting that for your album. So I can put that on really anywhere and know that, hey,
Right.
Exactly.
I'm gonna be able to get the message pretty clear.
It's gonna come through clear.
I can have some distractions in the background. And it just so happened that, Chicago's not the greatest parking city. So I was actually driving around trying to find parking to get on campus for 45 minutes and let that album roll.
There you go.
And so that for me, I knew that I wanted to be in a place where I could listen to it all the way through in one sitting and just sit with my initial reactions and let the Rapzilla genius lyrical miracle breakdown happen later. Why did Sho feel the need to knock at his wife's door? I can't wait for that lyric breakdown. But that is an important song. That is an important song that I want to get to.
Amen. And I would love to. Yeah. Anyway, I have this tendency to. Here's the thing that I try not to do. I try not to over-explain my lyrics and concepts, but there's this innate thing in me that wants to, because my lyrics specifically, but I also feel like other people's lyrics, especially within Christian music, they've been so underappreciated that I feel like, man, somebody needs to spend time and just have a discussion about these lyrics, bro. Like I remember listening to like Jay Gibbs's back in the day, or
Soul Rebel.
I'll be like, yo, I don't think people are really understanding what he's saying. I listen to a propaganda. I'll be like, are y'all listening to this? Like,
No.
I'll be like, these dudes are like saying things that are not only lyrically phenomenal, but contextually, like the double entendres, the meaning, the way that they would take simple, complex ideas and make them simple. I'm like, bro, we need to appreciate what's happening here. And I honestly felt like my lyrics are that as well. There's this brother Sail Out of Corner who does this. He has like lyric breakdown. And I didn't know he did it until he did one of my lyrics. And I was like, man, thank you for doing this. Like, this is what the culture needs. And so I may have him on the show one day to kind of just walk through a bunch of lyrics that he appreciates. I think that would be dope. So anyway.
Question for you on that point, Sho.
Yeah.
Do you think that the reason that oftentimes in the hip hop space, rappers who speak from a Christian point of view don't get that credit is because the production that is married with the lyrics? In other words, it might not sound as great, so we don't get to the lyrics because we don't get past the sound. That's one of the things I appreciate about your album that you haven't even spoken to yet. And I would love to hear, maybe off mic or on mic, just the production, the engineering. It sounds like a good album before you even get to the lyrics. And I think that might be one of the reasons why we don't get to the lyrics sometimes, is because the sound is not necessarily up to par of what we might be listening to in other spaces.
Well, let me first shout out and give a great round of applause to Jeremiah Atkins, who is the mix engineer for every song on the album. Just a good dude who I've known since Talented 10th. He actually engineered the Talented 10th album, and this is our first time working together since then. But also his production partner, X, or Xavier Hayes, but he goes by X, pretty much produced 95% of the album, or 90% of the album. And so those two together just made a wonderful team. And before I answer that question, I think what they did for me is, for the most part, every album I've come into the studio with a producer and we created from scratch. And so I think my albums are phenomenal when it comes to producing, whether it be like Jamie or Nate who produce stuff like on a narrative. But this album, I gave them a lot more control, in the sense of, give me what you think will push me, as long as it fits in this particular sound. Because I knew I wanted to stay within the 90s, but make the 90s current. So let's stay within the 90s kind of hip hop. And I'm going to give you suggestions, but I'm going to allow you to. And so literally like 5 of those songs on the album, maybe less, maybe 4 songs, were songs that they produced and like I heard them and I was like, I want that song. I want that song. And so, yeah. So to answer your question, I will say, I don't know, man. I think, if I'm honest, that was a problem maybe 10, 15 years
Earlier.
ago.
Yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
I do think the production is caught up. I think
Absolutely.
I listen to production and Christian artists. I'm just gonna call it Christian music because I just don't. It's fatiguing to try to all these proxies. I think it's I
I'm
think
not a
music. I
Christian
listen
artist.
to
I'm an artist who's a
all
Christian.
these artists who's are Christians that faith based inspirational music. I
Mhm.
listen to some of their music and I'm like, this stuff is just as good, even better than a lot of non Christian music.
Right.
I do think, but to your point, I do think the stigma
Yeah.
around them keeps people from thinking like we don't think that we can have geniuses within our space. Like we
Mm.
just don't give the people that like we'll listen to
Mm.
a Chance, we'll listen to a Kendrick, and we'll say
Mhm.
genius.
Mhm.
But we'll listen to other artists like we won't listen to a Swoop and say genius.
Mm.
Like
Come on.
easily. He has to drop like 6 albums that are amazing before we say, "Oh, that brother's a genius." You know?
Right.
As if God's
And then that's only going to be the people who heard of him. And yeah.
as if God's hand and touch can't as if God's hand and touch cannot be on Christians and believers just as it is on and I would call Kendrick a believer, but just as
Yeah.
it is on these secular artists,
Right.
I think that stigma
Yeah.
absolutely plays a part.
That's a much deeper issue where it's a lack of it's an identity crisis within the church and Christianity in general, where we've kind of bought into the lie that our stuff is always going to be inferior, but that's okay because we got Jesus. But it's like with the Kanye thing, or Ye, with Jesus is King, and everybody was so quick to be like, "Oh, he's Christian now." And I'm not trying to get into that conversation. I know it's old, but it just irritated me because it's like, y'all know we got dudes making great art who
Yeah.
have lived out their faith. Like, it is not whether that at that time, whether it is or is not a fad. Like, I don't know. It's just
Absolutely. And so I do think there's a hesitancy to attribute great praise to certain people. And then sometimes this may sound like I'm talking on both sides of my neck. It could be too quick to praise certain things too. But I do
mhm,
think
mhm.
for the most part the overwhelming problem is like a lack of critical, thoughtful praise to things that we will jump to. And I'll say this even about my album. I'm not going to stop people from calling it classics. I'm not going to stop people from talking about how great it is because that's just the human side of me. And I won't even say the human side.
Right.
There's a part of me that we want praise. We want to be encouraged.
Mhm.
But I do feel like after one listen, you probably are a little hasty calling it a classic. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen to the album for a month and then get back with me and then
Right.
say, you know what, man, like I think this album's a classic, or I think this is um I've tried to do that with whether it be Chance's album or the Clips album. Like I listened to Chance's album the first 2 times I listened to it, I was like, man, I'm not really feeling this album. And my sister was like, you crazy. And I was like, well, let me listen to it some more. And I just kept listening to it. And I was like, you know what? I think I wanted coloring book.
Mm.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why
Yeah.
I didn't
You
Yeah.
love
wanted
this
some
album.
hits.
Yes, I wanted some hits. There you go. You ain't got no problem. I wanted that. I wanted uh um I'm not gonna say any other names,
Blessings.
but blessings, yeah. And so, but when I sat down and listened, I said, "No more old men," and I'm like, "Just a drop." I'm like, "The Negro Problem." I'm like, these songs, they're not hits, but they're amazing. So
Right.
anyway,
And I think that's indicative of a larger issue in society. And people, I'm not the first person to say, oh, we live in a microwave society and all of these things,
right.
but we have to be mindful of how we are being conditioned and socialized
Mhm.
to receive
Mhm.
everything.
Everything,
So not only are we receiving our
everything.
news, our breaking news from clips, our content from clips, our podcasts from clips, we're also receiving art in these
Yeah.
short form ways. And we come
Yeah.
to an album like Midnight of Good Culture, like Starline, like other albums, expecting that same form of delivery when
Yeah,
these artists, to your point, have been working on this art for years. And this is
yeah,
why I appreciate how Chance has been rolling out, and I actually want to encourage you to do the same thing. He's like, nah, print out my lyrics. We gonna map quest this album. Print out my
Yes.
lyrics. Read my
Yes.
lyrics. Because
Yes.
there
Right.
is truth. There
Yes.
is depth. I did not work on this album for years for you to consume it in sound bites. I want you to sit with this music.
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
to me is
I
it.
miss liner notes so bad because that's what I used to do with any album I'd buy. Is we go to the
You
store,
hear
we
that
get the
show?
CD, open it
You hear
up,
that
I'm
show?
writing this
like
down. I'm writing this
boom,
down.
let's read it, man. Let's read it. Like let's and it.
No, I'm
Yeah,
literally writing this down. This is the thing. I'm about to print. I'm going to be printing out lyrics. So here's the other thing, Trice. Not only do I think we consume, it incentivizes artists to make in that same temperament as
Yeah.
well. And
Yes. We're making for
so we,
TikTok.
yep. And
Yep.
so therefore it cheapens the art. It cheapens who we are as humans. I think we live for virality rather than intimacy.
Talk
And
about it.
so when you miss the virality, then you're like you're left feeling underappreciated, but it's like you really didn't give us anything. Like you didn't really give us yourself. You just gave us
Yeah.
something that you thought was going to like hit and spread, but like who are you though? Like who are you? I'll never forget this. To kind of revisit the clips. Back in like 2012, 2011, I had a young brother, a good friend of mine before he got married. He lived with us. His name is Severian. So shout out Severian. Severian would always listen to clips, and he was huge on the clips. And to be honest, I've never really been like a clips fan in the sense that I deep dived into their music. I knew their hits, but I wasn't like deep. And I was like, yo, man, like, why do you love the clips? He's like, man, they're just so raw. It's intimate. I feel like I know them. I can feel their pain. And then I asked him, I was like, yo, why don't you listen to any Christian hip hop? He's like, man, yeah, it's very shallow.
Yeah.
And when he said that, it broke me.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was like, and this was like 2011, because that influenced my writing for Talented 10th. And I was like, yo, this is real. Like this is, and I started to think about the way that I would make my music. Am I just talking at people?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what happened? Like, and I think part of that, just to also be intimate, part of that talking at people was the way we were used as mercenaries in Christian hip hop for culture wars.
Correct.
Yep.
And so I realized, I have to break away from being this mercenary to speak at Black culture in order to get them into the church, more specifically white evangelical spaces, because during that time, even though we didn't start in the kind of white evangelical space, we kind of migrated that way because
That's
of
where
the
the market
influence.
was. Yeah.
That's where the market was. And so now you
Checked.
had John Piper asking us to do tour, Mark Driscoll inviting us to his house, James White like sitting down with us, being impressed about, like, you had all these folks and we were just sitting there like, yo, man,
Right.
Yeah.
And
not
then
knowing the whole time you were being used as a tool for someone else's cause.
And I'm not going to even sit here just to give them a little charity. I'm not going to say they were intentional, like we're going to use these Black boys.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like some old, like some 70s, like Black exploitation.
Right.
Ooh, Big Daddy going to use, But there's the subtle work of influence in that white evangelical space that had us in positions, and till you step out and you look and you see like, oh wow, like this, when I go back to the people in which I was making the music for, they would say, yeah, man, I appreciate the fact that you out here, you doing the Jesus thing, but man, I don't feel like you speaking to us. Like, I don't feel like you're making the music. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Even if I don't make music that appeals to their sensuality, I do need to speak in a way that is compassionate but full of truth. And I wasn't doing that. And that's when I said, I got to make this pivot. I got to change the way I make music. And so, I don't even know how I got on this rant.
Just about being formed and how you're making music, not necessarily for yourself.
That's right. That's
right. And it's very clear. This album is Sho. This album is you. From the concept to the lyrics to the songs to the production, it is you. But by sharing you are able to connect and show yourself to other people in a way that's
Mhm.
relatable.
Yeah.
And this, I think, from the impetus for the podcast, for the show, for the
Mhm.
album, it's
Mhm.
important to show not only where you differ, but to show that we are similar in more ways than we give credit. And through
Yes.
your music, I think you really show that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That's good,
How
man.
do you both Ian and Tryce, how does this apply to you and the way that the things you do are received in this kind of instant gratification culture versus how you produce? What are the temptations to produce for the market, and what are the consequences and how people may consume what you do as a pastor and as an academic?
I mean, I think for me, you don't ever want to make anybody angry, right? But you also want to make sure that you're being as um, faithful to whatever the content that you're covering. Yeah. So in my current role, I only preach 5 to 10 times a year, but I'll do some writing outside of that. But even just that's kind of what I was thinking about when with what you were talking about before. Like a lot of times, a lot of the writing or even sermon quote unquote illustrations, if you will, it's really not illustrations, more of just like, hey, here's how this might be applicable. Uh, where I'm sharing from who I am or kind of my experiences is a lot of times cathartic for me or something that I'm processing,
Mm,
trying to figure some stuff out. And those are the things much more than when I like, oh, this is just a great idea. This is profound. People need to hear this. When it's more of me kind of processing stuff that I'm, you know, one of my best friends talks about, hey, if you're not preaching to yourself, you ain't preaching to nobody.
yeah.
Um, you know, so
Mm, yeah.
and that's really kind of what I've seen is if it doesn't resonate with me, if I'm producing any sort of content that isn't at least in some way applicable to myself, it's going to ring hollow with people and even sometimes the stuff that I feel like is just for me, that I just need to get it out is the stuff that has resonated the most with people, that maybe didn't even have anything to do with them directly, but just the transparency and the honesty is they're like, man, wow.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I came into the academy after 2 years of working in a research center church support
Mhm.
space where I was doing work on the ground face to face away from the larger audiences and the platforms. And so I came into the academy with that as my ideal approach to
Mm,
research and to
Mm.
engagement with the world. What I realized is that in the midst of this social media explosion, that wasn't seen as a currency in the same way that followers and platform and views and reach
Yeah.
was.
yeah.
So the experience, the wisdom from working face to face on the ground with folks wasn't weighted the same as your followers and your reach.
Hmm.
And so I came into the academy with a little bit of a different perspective on my content, my writing, and the things that I had to say. But it left me oftentimes without necessarily outlets to get my things across because to get things published, to get things looked at, got to have, I've heard
Yeah.
one author say, a crowd. And
Yeah.
I didn't have that, but I did believe that I had the content, the substance, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily have the outlet to produce it. And so what I've had to do is really reject, especially since Tesla Man has bought up one of the main platforms for academics
Yeah.
to disperse
Yeah.
their art. I mean, you had folks on Twitter getting book deals from tweets,
Yeah.
Right.
publishers saying, "Oh, that's a great idea. I want you to come write about that." And then a year and a half later, they have a book. You have people that were building platforms from their following. But what I also think that conditioned folks into writers themselves is to write like they tweet
Mm.
Mm,
and write in such a way that is snap, you know,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to building something in a long form and building something that is of longer substance than just the
Yes.
moment. I don't want to
Yeah.
write just for the moment. I want to write for the future so that
Yes.
stuff can live and grow and
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
after 2 years not be relevant anymore. And that's how I'm approaching my writing.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, hopefully this will be a place where you can get your crowd. So
Hey, if
yeah.
it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, I'm cool with it. And I've already really made that peace with the Lord as well, that crowd doesn't necessarily validate my
Yeah.
credibility,
Come on.
credibility of my content.
That's it.
Number one, my Lord and Savior does, but I have a larger
What about Timberland?
responsibility to my family, to my
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and to my friends than I necessarily do folks that are AVs and avatars on Twitter and Instagram.
That's good, man.
Wait,
That's
man,
something that's
brother.
good. I have ideas sometimes like, man, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Like somebody should pay me a lot of money for this idea because I could help some people with it. And it's just like, and that's okay. You know?
Well,
It's
let
okay
me
to
ask this question. So let me rewind and then go to this question. Is it okay?
uh
Is it? Oh, let me write that down because as I get older, I forget. Um, yeah, I do. I have gotten to a place where I've accepted that I may never be or never have the kind of platform that I think my talent um
hmm
kind of deserves.
Yeah. And it's
And
okay to
that
say
makes
deserves.
and
It's
so
okay to
that's my
say that.
next that was my next question. Is it okay to think that you are dope? Because there's a lot of me that is like, man, like I look at the things I do and I'm like, man, I am phenomenal at this. Where I think the Lord has definitely helped me over the last, I'll say 10 years, is that I don't carry resentment for people not recognizing that I'm dope. There used to be years where I'll be like, there's no way you guys like this and I don't get like what's happening. And I think there's a couple reasons why I've come to that contentment is one, because the way I view contentment in general from a GK Chesterton quote that contentment doesn't mean that we have to be reserved to a particular thing, but we appreciate all that that thing
hmm
offers in its current state.
hmm
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that if I do a show and it's 400 seats, only 200 people show up. I'm like, well, Lord, I appreciate the fact that these 200 people even want to
Right.
hear what I have to say.
Right.
Even with the fact that I released this album, I don't know where it's charted. My distribution sent me something, and I try not to look at it, but I'm like, I don't know if this is good or if this is bad, but I just have the number, and I've seen how many is streamed. It's past my expectations, but I don't know what it's
hmm
done compared to other artists. But I'm like, hey, I appreciate what is, but also know that there may be an opportunity that the Lord may present me with more. I don't know. But the one thing that I will not change is the fact that I know how dope I am.
Mm.
Like I know I'm talented. And so in a sense, how does that how do you guys wrestle with, like you kind of talked about it, Tryce, but how do you wrestle with this concept that, man, I know I'm good, I know I'm talented, the world may not recognize it, I may not ever get the credit that I think I deserve, but I'm cool with that. And is it okay for me to even like carry a disposition of telling people how that I think I may be underappreciated, undervalued. Maybe not so much the last part. Leave the last part out. But just in general, like how do you feel about self-affirmation?
Mm. Well, for me, I know I'm at a place to appreciate my own work when I've done the work behind it.
hmm
So
Okay.
sometimes I think that you can carry yourself as if you are deserving of the praise without necessarily having done the work behind it to
Mm,
get to a place where the praise matches the work.
Come on.
So some folks may be praising your platform, praising your personality, but not necessarily praising the process behind it. So I know for me that I have done 8 years of thinking, writing, conversations, critique, revision, feedback, talking, meetings worth of work to where I've gotten to a place where I know I am ready to step out and have a word to say that's filled with substance and isn't devoid of it. So for me, it's really recognizing and having faith that the work that I've done is enough. But without that, I may feel a little insecure at times. I may feel a need to prop myself up and to act as if I am greater and holier than thou. But I don't, because I feel content and I feel a sense of belief that, hey, if whatever happens, I know I'm doing good work.
So, Sho, that's something we talked about a lot in our last cohort with Good Culture Institute too, right? Like this idea of contentment and excellence versus good enough. And,
Right.
that's for me something that when I read Ecclesiastes, it's throughout the book, but Ecclesiastes 9, 12, and 13 says, I know there's nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. And to me, that's kind of what I've been learning the last year is like, I mean, I've never been somebody who's had big platforms or anything, but I've had some big dreams, some big goals, and I still have some of those things. But is the work I'm doing good? Is it the
Right.
best that I can do? And that to me is
Yeah.
excellence, right? Excellence is not, it's the best
Right.
that's ever
Come on
been
now.
done.
Or it's viewed as the best.
Correct.
Right.
Is it the best that I can do? And that kind of tries, that's what you were saying really resonated with me in that regard. Like, did I give it what I had? And am I able to sit back and call it good?
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
Like God did in Genesis. Like, I can see it's good. And if I can see it's good, then I know that I can find satisfaction in my toil. And that's the gift of God, right? Not the recognition, not the celebration, not the,
Come on.
it's me being able to say, man, I did that.
Right.
And I didn't do it just through my own strength and abilities, but through the gifts that God has given me. And so, that's.
And it takes the image of God, literally the spirit and the image of God in you to keep you from, once you step back and you say it is good, to look around and say, you guys agree, right? Like,
Right.
like it's like, no, like I step back, it is good and it's it is finished.
Yeah.
Like I don't need other people to come around to say, you know what, you may. He's like, I didn't ask you.
Right.
Now, to some degree, yes, we can get into a deeper discussion around, but there's an evaluation that goes along with our cultivation and our work. But it does take a special dispensation of the Lord to just bring you to a place of peace once you're done creating.
This is good culture.
So one of the ways I feel like we center ourselves is by friendships. And I know myself and you, Ian, over the last 2 weeks, we spent time at men's retreats, and some of the topics were friendships. So as men who are doing extraordinary things in your own cities and in the world, why are friendships important? How do friendships keep you centered in this work and keep you from lusting for the praise and approval of people?
I think because when you have friends, like real good friends, not, and we talked about this last weekend, not people you hang out with and do fun stuff with, right? Like a lot of times that's our culture's definition of a friend, is like, this is my homie that I go to the movies with, or we hoop together or whatever. But when you have people who know you, who know your struggles, who know your challenges, who know your, I don't want to say secrets so much, but like the stuff about you that you don't share with just everybody, and then they are able to affirm those things or push, like when you can be open and vulnerable and still experience that love and community and dedication that comes with a true friendship, then the rest of that stuff doesn't matter so much, because that need for validation, because I feel like that's really what a lot of it is, right? Even with the crowds or the followings, is we just want to experience some level of validation. And when you have real quality friendships, like I'm more validated when one of my close friends says, "Man," he said, "Man, I love you. I count you as a brother. I'm so thankful that here's the things that you've helped me with." That means more to me, I feel like, than if I had if a sermon that I preached somehow went viral and got 100,000 views. Like, I don't know those people,
Yeah.
Mm.
but the fact that I know this man, and not just him, just who's in my mind right now, but the fact that there are people who can share stories of, hey, your involvement in my life has made an impact in this way.
As
And
someone
that's
who's went viral twice, I'm gonna tell you, it is fleeting.
right.
Nothing.
Would you go viral,
Very-
Show?
Don't worry about that. But
Cool.
nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
To your point, nothing substantive for the most part comes from that. Opportunities may come, but nothing real substantive comes from just
Mhm.
viral clips. But go ahead.
No, that's it. It's the validation of who you are, not what you do.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
and then again, like you said, like finding the image of God within yourself and understanding the inherent worth and value that you have
Yes.
as a human. It allows you to then go and produce that good work, because you're not trying to prove anything to anybody. It's like,
Yeah.
I got these people who really know me, and they say, and they gonna co-sign me, and so I don't need to prove myself to anybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I would say that when I create, I think first primarily of whether or not what I create aligns with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly following that, I think about, does it align, and how does my community receive it? And
Yeah.
not just the community of faceless people online, but the people that know me well,
Mm-hmm.
and that know whether or not what I'm saying passes the sniff test. And
Right.
that's one of the things that we lose a lot of times. And it's why I often send out my work to people to review before it goes out to the masses,
Yeah.
because the people who know me know whether or not it's genuine,
Yeah.
and they know whether or not what I am saying aligns with my life, like we talked about earlier. And so for me, my community is crucial for me,
Yeah.
because it allows me to wrestle, not in isolation, but in community, before what I create necessarily hits the web. And it's
Mm-hmm.
important for me to have people that know me, and that
Yeah.
know, and that I have the relationship with, to where they feel as if they can critique and hold me accountable as well.
Yeah.
If my relationship with others is limited only to a comment section or DM,
Mm-hmm.
then the likelihood of accountability following that, I think, is limited. Now, in
Yeah.
some cases, social media can be a space to build genuine and true relationships where accountability can come. But especially for someone who creates, having genuine community with individuals allows not only for me to have safe spaces, but also opens me up for genuine critiques and accountability, because they know me.
Yeah.
I one way that you've played this, that you've actually been this for me, Tryce, it made me realize, like, I was thinking about this, especially in the context of creating, is when I wrote my piece about sinners for CT, and like how we both talked highly about the movie. We texted and we were like, let's, and then I knew I was going to write a piece about it, and I sent it to you, and your suggestions and your thoughts around it actually helped me, and changing some things. And I appreciate that kind of friendship to have with people, because in a lot of ways you can create in your own head, and your friends are there to keep you from yourself in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Because I could have went a different direction with that piece, and that direction would have been probably the wrong direction. And I think your insight helped me and to go in a different direction. But it made me also think of another piece that a friend of mine wrote for CT, a brother Justin Hampton, wrote about friendship, and how in Kings, when Solomon is appointing his council, he appoints a priest, he appoints someone over the army, he appoints people over economy, he appoints someone over agriculture. He also, as some many translations, he appointed a friend. And this individual was his advisor, somebody who would just, hey, Solomon, you are tripping, my dude. Like, and I think the way in which we oftentimes make friends happens within this kind of ethereal, kind of nonchalant space. And I think we have to think about friendships more as an appointees.
Yeah.
And that's in a lot of ways how I've developed my relationship with both of you. We just got to talking, got to connecting, and then I said, hey man, I need you in my life. Like I want you to play a particular role in my life that I know I may have a deficiency in. And hopefully I can do the same for you. And I think about how there's a scarcity of that, because on the playground back as a child, you would say, hey, would you be my friend? And you'd be like, yes.
Right.
I was just about to say that.
Right.
How often do we do that? How often do we tell others, I need you in my life. I want you in my life for this reason. And it's okay to say that. It's okay. There are very few people in my life where I know I can go to and hear from on everything, personal, social. They know enough of my life years, back. They know my family. It's okay to say to people, hey, we really relate in this particular way. I want to be friends with you. And then that can birth that larger friendship where you can go to someone for a variety of different things.
Absolutely. Amen, bro. I realize as you get older, there's less time for just kind of passive friendships.
Yeah.
You have to be really intentional about the time you spend, because now you have family, now you have the anxiety of work and maybe property and all these other things. And so you just don't have, you have to be very strategic about the interconnectedness of friendship. And so I spend time at church. Can I connect with people through there? I have a job. How can I develop friendships through here? I may go to work out or do this leisure. Like, how can I develop friendships through this? And how can I intentionally say, hey, when we're spending this time together, let's spend time. Like, let's spend real, genuine time together. And I do think when you name that, when you say it, it is so refreshing for the other brother to be like, yo, I've been feeling the same way, Doc. I didn't know how to say it, but and it was, I didn't want to be no punk. But yeah, it's such a refreshing thing. And I found like I just tell brothers, like, hey man, I spoke at an event this past week, and his brother we've had a social media friendship. I won't even say friendship. We've had a social media and multiple social media interactions. And so he invited me to come speak at his organization. And so I spoke there. And after seeing him in person and seeing him interact with his wife and seeing him interact with other people, I said, hey, man, I need you to be a friend of mine in this kind of way, in this kind of capacity. He's like, for sure. So we exchanged numbers. And so, yeah, I think it's just necessary for us to do that.
Sometimes guys, especially, it's hard for them to make the kind of friendships that we're talking about because of what you said. Like, don't want to be viewed as a punk or weak or like weird or whatever. Sometimes, I don't mean for this to sound weird, but sometimes you got to take the first step and be willing to be,
ask him go out on a date.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't use that terminology, but yeah.
Give me a cup of coffee.
I said I didn't want to make it weird.
Bro, you want to go on a man date, bro?
I got a reservation for 2.
Man, listen,
I got a reservation
my wife
for
used
2.
to try to set me up on those kind of things. Like, you need to be friends with this guy. It's like, but I don't like that person. But
Hey, what's their name
she's
so that they
gotten
can watch
better.
this
She's
podcast?
gotten, no, I'm
Exactly.
definitely not going to do that. No, I think the feeling was
Okay.
mutual though, so it's not really a problem. But no,
Well,
man,
yeah, you were.
sometimes people, you just got to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable, and just be like, I'm gonna give it a
Absolutely.
shot, and yeah,
Well, I think
that's it.
a lot of so to be very spiritual, I think about Jesus. Jesus
Hmm.
calls, he tells people to follow him. He says, "Hey, follow after me."
Right,
Like this is the way we're gonna build friendships. Is you just come follow my
right.
life. And in a lot of ways, I'm not trying to be condescending to anyone, but I'm saying like, hey, I want to build a relationship with you. I want to follow you, and I want to ask that you follow me. And then in some ways, we're going to try to build a relationship
Yeah,
as we follow each other, and and it's very intentional. This is like a very intentional. Jesus didn't say, "Hey, as you kind of like think about it passively, like, hey,
right,
the rich young ruler is similar ways. Like, if you want to follow me, man, this is a commitment." And so,
right.
friendship is a lot of commitment. This is why I think, uh, you try to think about who you're reaching out to, but then also,
Hmm.
you probably only have a few real intimate friends. I think
Yeah.
social media, the way that we time travel, I don't mean that like in a witchcraft way, but the way that we travel through time and space because of modern
Hmm.
technology, is very easy to establish fabricated friendships. But
Yeah.
if we were really to break it down, we probably only have probably no more than 5 real good friends. And those people, as Tryce said, they know in every area of life, you can share things with them that you probably wouldn't share with other people, and they would not love you any
Right.
less.
Right.
But then you have other people that and I have a really interesting time. I have people who I call friends, then I have the next level of folks I'm just cool with, and then there are people I know. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and I get very frustrated when I meet somebody who I like, people I know, and they say, like, "Hey, I met your friend such and such," and I'm like, "He called me a friend?" Like, we are not friends. Don't be tossing like, I can't hold that man accountable.
Mhm.
I don't know what. So anyway, all that to say, to circle back, I do think there's a sense of quite, not only intentionality, there's intentionality, but commitment to
Yeah.
friendship. If you're going to be appointed by someone, I think
Yeah.
I'll say this, like early 2000s, I had a brother that I went to college with. I love this dude. We were, I would say we were cool. I would put him in a cool category. He asked me to be in his wedding, and I was like, "Yeah, man, I'll be in your wedding because I know you and your wife." And I
Mhm.
supported. And then at one point, he asked me to be his best man, and I said, "Ugh." I said, "Man, I'm gonna have to turn it down because I just don't feel like I know you good enough to be your best man." And I just had to be like, "Nah, man, I don't think I can be that for you at this moment, but we can build towards that." You know what I mean? Because you're asking
Mhm.
me to make some sort of statements that I don't feel like I can make at this current moment. And I think similarly, when we think about friendships, I think we have to have that same disposition. It's like, to what level of commitment are we asking each other to be a part of, and am I willing to be that for you? And
Right.
but the reality is we all need those people. So have those people, but don't overdo it, because that's just my
Yeah.
own two
Right.
cents.
Yeah, I spoke recently on this topic. I did a chapel for a football team. One of my former teammates is a coach of. You see my helmet here. The glory days, the good old days, the
Yeah,
days that
let's
are far, far in the past. The
let's
knees,
see, how
the
clean is
back.
that. The question is, how clean is that helmet? Because you probably
So
wasn't
that's
putting the helmet. You weren't putting the helmet on anybody. It ain't looks.
so that was the gift. That was the one, signed by your teammates. And
Gotcha.
Oh,
and
okay.
I tried to keep my helmet. They came knocking. They said, Trice, we see you ain't turned in. Revolution shut 4-3-8-9. I had to give that back over, but still wish I wouldn't have done that.
I hear
But
you.
I
Mhm.
spoke on the life and ministry of Paul, and one of the things that you see Paul referencing throughout his letters are the folks that are with him.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And there's a particular moment where he's speaking in his letter to Timothy where he says, Luke alone is with me. And when he says that, I find that to be extremely powerful, because there's Demas who leaves and deserts because Paul says he falls in love with the world. But to say Luke alone is with me, I think is important because when Paul is writing that letter, he's writing knowing the end is near. And he's writing to Timothy, come and see me. Come and visit me. I want to see you.
Yeah.
And to know that he in that moment had gone through much affliction, but not only does he write, speaking of his affliction, he writes to his friends that he wants to see. And I know that I have friends that I want to call on. And friendship not only requires us to be along the ride for the good times, we should expect our friends to be there through the difficult times and through the affliction. But that also requires us to be honest and vulnerable when we need them as well.
Right.
And not just expect them to show up out of the blue and know everything that's going on, because they have their own lives as well. We need to be able to call on our friends, call them off the bench into the game and say, friend, I need you in this moment. Can you be here for me?
This is good culture.
Interesting that we were talking about friendship and kind of the disposition and I'll say the harmony and melody that makes up being a good friend. One of the things I've learned about myself, and I realized this today, it's something that's always been in the back of my head, but today became even more prevalent as I was walking through the grocery store early this morning. When I walk through the grocery store, when I walk through any kind of public space, if I'm at the gym, I find it very difficult to smile and greet young black men, middle-aged black men with a smile or like a jovial disposition.
Oh, you violating the cardinal sin. You the brother in the store and in public that don't nod to me whenever I nod to him?
No, it's like I nod, but it's not like a, hey, how you doing? Like when I see it, and I learned this because I walk past this young kind of middle-aged black. If you're around my age and you have like a disposition about you that's kind of like urban, I'll say urban, aggressive, maybe, I don't know, hip hop. Now I'll say if you grew up like you listen to hip hop and you're black and younger, I always feel like I gotta be like, I'll nod like this. I'm like,
you gotta set that boundary.
I gotta set that
boundary.
But literally 2 minutes later, an older black man walks by me. I'm like, hey, how you doing, sir? You doing all right? You have a good day, you know? I was so talkative. I was like, hey, you know, it's just, what is that? Why is that? Help me. Why am I this way? Why do we feel this need to, not we, I'm just going to say me. Why do I feel this need to, as you say, set this boundary? Like, hey, what up, doc? You know what I'm saying? What's up? You good? I'm good. You good?
Just to let you know.
Just like, hey, look.
If you need to go there. Hey, I ain't no punk.
I mean,
you know,
Tryce is a sociologist. So.
You know what I'm saying? But if it's an older black man and he, you know, I mean, hey brother, how you doing? You like, oh, I can't call it that. I can't call it either.
I'm blessed and highly favored.
Blessed and highly favored. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I quote 7 scriptures before that brother walk away 3 steps. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I think there's something to that. And one of the things that I think about, because I too have done that. There was an older man in Ace Hardware. I was going to get a broom because I needed an African broom. I needed whenever I went over to the Kenya, we put that straw together, tied that rope around it, and that's what and that's the best broom I've ever had in my life. So I said I need something.
Hold up. They got them at Ace Hardware.
They got them at Ace.
You made it?
Well, I mean, they have made it. They made it. I mean, they're putting.
I'll look it up. I'm gonna post it.
Okay.
So
I'm
gonna show people what they. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Finish your test.
Yes.
You went to Ace Hardware.
But I went to Ace. I said I need a sturdy broom. I don't need those plastic brooms. I need a wooden handle. I need a sturdy broom. And there was an older man in the section, and he said, "Yeah, you got to be careful with that one because if you put it on the straw, if you lay it on the straw, it'll bend. So you got to be careful. You want to put it up." And we had a great exchange over a broom. But I think that interaction that I had with that man, and because he reminded me of my grandfather. Mm-hmm. He had his Central Oklahoma from the country. He
I
had
know
his
what you're talking about.
blue
Yeah.
button up. You know, my grandpa used
Yeah.
to always wear overalls. My great granddaddy, you know, always had his blue jeans on, had his little
Yeah.
work hat. There was a familiarity there. And
Yeah.
there was also a nostalgic aura about him
Mhm.
that took me to a
Yeah.
place where I felt safe immediately. And I didn't have to ask questions about this clearly 80-ish year old man of what his intentions were, because I knew he was cool. And so there was
And
I
he
think
has
there's
the equity to correct me and to tell me what, like, you just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
correct,
Say
correct,
almost
correct.
like a
There might
natural
not be,
deference to age. Yeah.
yes, yeah, that
I
deference
had a
might not
similar
necessarily.
situation in Kroger. I'm grabbing peppers, and this older black brother just gave me a dissertation on the different peppers.
Talk to me.
He just had to. He's just like, now what
Yeah.
you want to do is you don't want that one. You want to get this one right here, and you want to get that one, and spent 5 minutes just lecturing me about peppers, and I felt with everything in me was like, I do not want to listen to you, but my body would not allow me to move. The ancestors said, you better keep your feet right here
Right,
and listen to
right.
every word this
Yeah.
man said.
That ancestral hand got on the back of
Exactly. It
your
was
neck.
just like,
Yeah.
just right here. You better sit there. You better look at him and nod and be like,
Right,
that's good.
right,
That's
right,
good.
right. But why is it, and why am I the way that I am, where I won't give that same amount of respect and deference to
Yeah.
folks that I don't know in everyday life? And it's an important, I think, reminder for me, and something that I really do try hard to do. I heard KB, shout out KB, talk about this one time about how we have to be mindful of our perceptions. And this is where the sociologist comes out in me. So many things influence our perceptions of others, and it
Mhm.
happens in split-second
Yeah.
moments where I have drawn conclusions about you literally from the moment I saw you 5 steps away from me to the moment that you pass. I've built up this perception of you based on what we call like a cognitive schema, which is a
Mhm.
fancy way of saying an invisible playbook of where you fit in based on where you wear, your appearance, what location I'm in, what's the neighborhood like, what do they say it's like, what's my experience in
Mhm.
this space, am I familiar? So we build up these things, and I think it's important to always be mindful and to let the spirit guide our perceptions of others, not the ways in which we've been socialized to perceive others based on their attributes, identity, or the space that we're in.
This is good culture.
When I think about the ethos of good culture, we are trying to help people cultivate and create things that are good, not only
Yeah.
for themselves, but for the flourishing of a better society. And
Yep.
so, no matter if it's in a religious context or if it's outside of a religious context, what does it look like to see your vocation, your skills, and your talent as a conduit for good for other people? And so a lot of
Yeah.
times we don't get good frameworks, whether it be theologically, philosophically, sociologically. We don't get frameworks on how to be good cultivators of the world. And we want good culture to be that. We want good culture to
Yep.
be a place where you can come and share in like-mindedness with people who are like you, but also to be informed by people who are experts in the field. So stick around. I'm sure this will be a blessing and a benefit for you. Thank you for listening to the Good Culture Show. We hope our conversation sparked something in you. And since you've made it this far, you might as well share, subscribe, and leave a review. Stay connected as we curate, create, and commentate. You can also learn more about good culture at goodcultureinstitute.com. Until next time, be joyful and do good.